headline stories that would inform our further discussions on our newspaper review segments as we look to break them down with a view of critically analyzing the stories in the news. Remember that you're also invited to join the conversation on our online stream, either on our webpage or our YouTube channel, and make your comments across our social media platforms in reaction to these stories. But we do advise that you do it from the prism of objectivity and refrain from using inflammatory or inciting comments when you look to make your comments. Now, at this point in time, would be joined virtually by in-house reviewer, Dr. Aliyu Ilias, who joins in from the nation's capital so we can begin the conversations. Hello, Doctor. Good morning to you.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you join us on the program. Let's get your thoughts to start with on one of the prominent issues with some controversies and reactions from Nigerians who want to see the National Assembly on its toes in terms of the grilling and scrutiny afforded to the 2025 budget by different MDAs. So far, one of the major talking points is the newly created Ministry of Livestock Development, where the National Assembly is reportedly frowning at 11.8 billion naira as its 2025 budget. They're also advising the minister that the huge chunk of the money and the efforts in terms of projects should not be centered on cattle and ranching alone. What do you make of this development?
Right, I think it's quite interesting. You know, while we are here, Ministry of Livestock and Development, we all think it's majorly on
cattle and ranching.
Cattle and all those things. So I don't know why they are trying to actually, but the budget must have had the focus. So I think the focus should have been the best thing to approach to, because for me, 1.8 billion, it is very small money for such a ministry.
11.8 billion, not 4.8, 11.8 billion.
11 for me, 11.8 billion. It's not much money at this economy to really cater to our challenges in the agricultural sector or even in the livestock sector. You call that for you to look at cattle rearing and also create an enabling environment for them. I think it's a big issue. So for me, it's not a big money. I think National Assembly can focus more on other things.
Now, whilst the sum might not be as big in your terms of reviewing it, one of the critical components missing that continues to raise eyebrow is a detailed breakdown of what that money would be used for. The ministry has still also not submitted its white paper. Do you see a reason for concern as to why the National Assembly would be worried over this development? Doctor, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm with you.
I was asking because there's no detailed breakdown of what this 11.8 billion now would cater for, and the ministry's white paper was also not attached in its budget defense.
Right. You recall that the ministry is quite a new ministry, and because it's a new ministry, they may not get a lot of things right at the beginning. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Well, I believe there's a little bit of delay.
So possibly they don't get they have not done any project majorly before. So the project, the bringing together of the budget may not be easy for them compared to other ministries. So I think National Assembly should also consider that area, because the new ministry, they are in a new terrain. Though they may bring a permanent secretary with experience and what have you, but the structure itself might not be okay. So they should just consider them in that direction and let them start. And the major thing the National Assembly should do is that they should do much more oversight on whatever budget they approve for them.
Now, one of the challenges there would be that some Nigerians are reacting to these on social media and saying they do not clearly understand the mandate of the Ministry of Livestock Development. Much like we started in our introduction, a lot of people assume it's basically for cattle and ranching. Do you think at this point there needs to be an informed position on letting Nigerians know what the mandate of the ministry is, and in terms of a timeline to expect the ministry to begin to deliver on its mandates?
That is the work of the ministry itself. Their major work is to look at those things and give them a timeline that they will have to follow up very, very well. And that's why we always talk about oversight function. It is not enough to approve a budget, but also to follow it up. I think they can even make it a quarterly review for them because it's a new ministry, so they can look at it from quarterly review. I think they should do is to have a strong oversight function so that they will not derail from the actual proposal they are bringing up.
Now, whilst this is the case and some of the agencies have availed the National Assembly the opportunity to look at their budgets, give room for a defense and grill and scrutinize it, there have been notable absentees. Now, the 48-hour ultimatum has been issued by Senator Sani Musa in light of this absence by certain agencies to defend their budgets. Does it somewhat worry you that in keeping with the budget cycle we're looking forward to, a lot of these agencies, is it that there's no sanction, or don't they even fear the fact that fundings for their budget might be withheld by the National Assembly? Why do you think a lot of them are evading this budget defense?
Right. For me, I think they should make one of them a scapegoat, as you say, because if you did not show up for the budget and the National Assembly is to not even pass your budget, and for the first 6 months or 3 months you didn't have any allocation, I think that will wake others up, because how will you be invited to come and defend your budget and you not be available? So that's a sad one. So if you cannot be available as a minister, the Minister of State may be available. If Minister of State cannot be available, other people that responsibility can be available. So for me, I think National Assembly should start sanctioning whoever fail to actually defend their budget. That's how it should be. Because if we keep taking care of them with kid gloves, they start taking advantage of it. Because defending the budget will make sure that they even follow what they're supposed to follow. That fear will be there that they actually defend what they actually are expending. So for me, I think there should be a sanction. Either you deny them the budget for 6 months, or you tell them to come and defend before they can start using any appropriation.
Now, during the defense yesterday, a number of statements and clips have gone viral, and I would like your reaction to a number of them. Senator Ireti Kingibe stated her encounter with core members of the Federal Road Safety Corps last year, and she noted that despite having said to have generated a revenue of over 5.9 billion naira, the FRSC only remitted 1.9 billion naira. Now, she raised concerns as to why the Federal Road Safety Corps would be manning residential roads as against having them on trunk A roads. I don't know, in rating the performance of certain agencies in terms of their revenue generation strategies and actual amounts remitted, do you think the National Assembly needs to do more in ensuring transparency and accountability?
Right. Let me take it from a situation whereby the national road safety failed to man where they're supposed to man. I can tell you authoritatively that in my area, you see road safety manning a small road that you are supposed to use that road to lead to another road. And I kept going, and they were stopping us from the residential area. You imagine, why are they actually embarking on that? I think they should remind them of their responsibility and what they should do. Though I can also call them, because when there is emergency, I think the best people to attend to you, or the first point of call, is Federal Road Safety call, because I can tell you if there's any accident, you see them coming up on time, see them lifting the car, I'll see them reacting to emergency. For that, I will call them. But in terms of revenue, you recall also they have the same issue with JAM, that you are remitting a particular amount and what you are collecting is actually much more than. I think we government need to let all these revenue generating agencies knew that their importance is to generate revenue, not to expend all their revenue. So sometimes we have to monitor them and see what they're actually spending the money on. Because if they are not monitored, it's not good. So for me, I think the best bet is for them to send all the revenue they make to the federal government, and federal government give them in turn with what they need, and what they need must not be above what they generate. I think that would be the best rules to set for these agencies.
Now, there's also some controversy as it concerns the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board. A number of figures have been banded on what it was meant for in terms of fumigation, with the JAM registrar having to come out and clear the air. First, he's saying that it is false that 850 million naira was budgeted for fumigation, that the amount used last year was not up to that, was just there about 1 million naira. Do you think that this avails Nigerians more avenue to scrutinize some of the spending habits of agencies on what many would consider are miscellaneous and not necessarily important. Let's get your thoughts on this.
Right. I think I was shocked when I saw the news, and I think whoever is bringing wrong information need to be cautioned very well because when I listened to that, when I saw that news, I now it came to me that this agency mostly return money to federal government in large sum because you recall that the registrar will have before this present professor Oloyede, I think fairly woefully, and Professor Oloyede has actually raised the bar. So I now wonder why at this point in time he said that he has actually become so low of what he used to do. So I think we need to get that thing correct. However, honestly, I salute the courage of the National Assembly to actually scrutinize, to question how our money has been expended. That's a good one because if you don't check all these people, they tend to abuse the process, abuse the money with them, and they can bring projects that you cannot be found. So I think it's a good one for federal government through National Assembly to keep on checking on this agency that are revenue generation agencies.
Now, let's pick up on another angle that has been captured on the front page. It was captured earlier on the front page of the Daily Times, and it's on foreign mission expenses. Now, the House of Reps and the federal government are reportedly disagreeing over 286 million naira budgeted for foreign mission expenses. I would recall last year, if I'm not mistaken, that there was a directive from the presidency on the need to cut down on the Esther codes and entourages for certain foreign missions. In line with that, are you satisfied that despite that directive, 286 million naira in 2025 has been budgeted for foreign mission expenses?
Well, for me, when you say foreign mission, I try to differentiate the two. Are we talking about the ambassador's expenses or government agency traveling down to abroad or what have you? So I try to get the difference between the two. However, when we are talking about foreign mission, you recall that our foreign mission, most of those countries does not even have a standard consular or ambassador. So, and we are expecting President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to actually carry out so that we can actually enjoy the full dividend of being in another country and trading and to help Nigerians. But then in terms of the expense of those that travel, maybe entourage or people from ministry, I think it's a good one that will start localizing some things. You see that ordinary trainings, people they will say they are going to Rwanda, going to UK for what we can do locally. What we can even go to Dukatu Ranch and what we can go to Ikogosi and what we can go to Yankari and establish that place and to do. So we need to start building up such in such a way that we will reduce the level of entourage and will reduce the level of activities we are doing abroad. I think it's very key. You cannot see a foreigner coming saying they are coming to Nigeria for training or for what have you. So I think we need to look into that properly.
Well, now in resting this conversation as it concerns the 2025 budget, let's also move on to another pertinent issue which we discussed last week. And this morning, the Business Day is telling Nigerians that there has been a move by the federal government to ensure a full deregulation of the petroleum downstream sector, but that this move is encountering certain hurdles and challenges from stakeholders in the sector with the price war that has begun. This morning, we're hearing that the depot price at Dangote has also hit 950 naira per litre. What are your projections as it concerns this full deregulation by the federal government and the bottlenecks, we're told, in line with this petrol price war?
Right. Well, I'm a bit confused about federal government saying that they want to do full deregulation. So what are they be doing after the coming of Dangote and Nigerian petroleum companies, NNPCL refinery coming up? I think for me, I love competition. So for me, I think there should be much more competition, whereby what just happened now will happen. So when depot or some people increase their own price, you can equally move to Dangote. And when Dangote increase their price, you can also move to importation. And when importation is not working, you move to NNPC. I think it's a good one that will have strong competition. Well, in terms of deregulation, I think government need to come clean in the issue of deregulation and let the public know or they are still supporting. You recall that in the National Assembly, when the Minister for Finance was called and they are asking about deregulation, I think he said they should do it in a closed door, and that actually was surprising. I don't think such issues should be in secrecy. It should be an open discussion, because Nigeria have actually put mind in this issue of fuel subsidy, and we have suffered a lot around it as well. So I think they should come open to tell us the level of subsidy that's actually going, not that they will request for a closed door meeting when it comes to issue of subsidy.
Now, there's also been the partnership between Dangote and MRS, and so far that partnership has been on for a fortnight more. Would you say that that has greatly influenced a reduction in the price of petrol, or would you say that more needs to be done because with the coming on board of Port Harcourt and Warri refineries, there should be at least a major depreciation in the price?
Right. For me, I think coming in of Dangote itself has bring a robust supply side, which is what we are expecting. So when you have much more supply side over time, it will be a factor to reduce the price. However, in terms of a deal with Dangote and MRS, I find it very, very how do I call it? I find it worrisome that Dangote will choose MRS, perhaps maybe his cousin or his own, only to deal with and give a cheaper price when there are other ones. So I think it's an opportunity for the marketers now to also ask for such deal from Dangote so that they can also benefit from it. But MRS deal, I think, is a good one if it will bring reduction in price. Anything that will bring reduction in price of PMS to Nigeria, I think it's a good one, and we'll always embrace it.
All right, and keeping with time, let's also move on to another issue highlighted. And like we all know, today, the 15th day of January, is the Armed Forces Remembrance Day. But as we continue to honor our fallen heroes and remember living veterans, one issue that continues to worry many of them with recent protests, even to the front gates of the National Assembly, is over the non-payment of entitlements. I don't know if it's also worrisome to you that this has continued to be more like a tradition in Nigeria where, except they protest, some of them go to the great beyond without receiving such entitlements.
Right. I think it's saddening that we see our senior citizens suffering to collect what they actually deserve. It's so sad that we'll be experiencing it. I think it is sad one that the heroes, people that if you go to the how do I call it, abroad, especially America, you see the level at which they give respect to the Nigeria, to their military. Anything military, anything senior citizen have paid the price for the country to actually be at where they are now. So I don't think they should delay their rights, their pay and what have. So I think it's a case of urgency. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu must intervene and make sure that all these are fallen heroes are actually well compensated. You also recall that was it the Minister of State or the Minister of Defense that is saying that 50 billion is too small to cater to the military as in terms of budget, which is actually enjoining the National Assembly to make sure that they actually increase the budget. I'll tell you, if you don't take care of security, it's a serious issue for any country that does not take care of the security, because every other thing have to be built upon a peaceful environment. And our security, as you know, in Nigeria for the past 15 to 15 years has been actually compromised in a bigger way that even investors will not want to come. So I think anything that concerns the military, they need to settle them and make sure that, especially the senior citizens have sacrificed a lot in the military, they need to do the needful and pay them as and when due.
Now, there's also some of the advocacies by the ex-CDS, Mr. Lucky Rabo. He's talked about the need for post-traumatic stress facilities and certain tax rebates for retirees, especially those who served within the armed forces. Talking about welfareism. Are these two very important? Do they top the priority on some of the gestures the nation can show to these great men and women who gallantly served in the armed forces?
Well, for me, I think they actually even deserve more because, for you to go to the war, face the war and able to actually come out of it, definitely there's a lot of traumatic. It's even difficult for them to settle among other people after going through that stress. They have lived in barrack, so there is need for them to even have a house. Once you are coming back to the society, you're supposed to be given a lot of facilities that will make you not to want to be susceptible to some things. So I think it's well deserved according to Ira. But he has gone through it and he has seen that there's need to take care of the senior citizen better. So I think there should be a better budgetary allocation for them. There should be a better welcome package for them, and there should be a post-traumatic, programs for them. Even when you are retiring, some people say retire well lessons, retire well education. There's a lot of things that need to, because they are transiting from that war front to a society, and they need to be, educated on how to actually be in that society.
Now, you've also talked about the need for improved budget funding to tackle insecurity. It's a position also shared by Beto Matawale. Listening to his defense of the budget, he says that 50 billion naira cannot end insecurity. He was urging the lawmakers to improve the budgetary allocations. But many would argue the opposite, that over the years, with Nigeria's budget, the defense has gotten a better chunk of it. Do you think that the key answer to ending insecurity in Nigeria would be to continue dumping or funding more money in the quest to strengthen our defense? Are there no other options to explore?
Well, there are other options, but I can tell you to buy one personnel armor carrier, I mean personnel the armor carrier, that what it simply means, because you need to buy much more fighter jets, much more armored vehicles, and a whole lot of things. So for me, I think they need to increase budget in that area. However, I'm not a fan of kinetic approach to war. There should be non-kinetic approach, which would have been much more better for Nigeria, because and that's why we are calling on DSS. We see that they have appointed deputy director DSS. They need to also do more by making sure that they go out all out to look for intelligence. When you get more intelligence, it helps to actually reduce level of using a kinetic approach. So I think beyond the normal increments that we expect for, and I'm convinced that National Assembly will have to increase that budget from 50 billion. They also have to look at non-kinetic approach through this, our civil defense, Nigerian police, DSS, even our NIA. They need to do more to gather more intelligence. And we must also say kudos to the NIA, will I call DG, Nuhu Ribadu, who have been trying to make sure they are well coordinated. If we have a coordinated forces, I think that will help us to do more. But to have a coordinated forces means to have much more budgetary allocation for them.
Now, you talked about an appointment which has been dubbed the first of its kind in terms of a female handling the saddle of the ex-director of the DSS. Talk us through that and your takes on what this appointment would foretell for the DSS.
I think ideally, having have a DG, there's supposed to be maybe deputy DG like 5 or so. So we have one now. So I'm thinking the president is trying to go to the right direction, not whereby the DG or the DSS DG will become like an emperor that will have to take every decision. But in this case, if you have like 5 deputy, which we have now, one from the northern part of Nigeria, I think Kogi State, can now work in cohesion with the DG itself. I think it's a good one that we're having a female and we're having deputy director that will be supporting the director of DSS.
Now, still talking security, especially on the Armed Forces Remembrance Day, you talked about kinetic not being the best approach. In quelling the tension in the southeast, the CDS has attributed some level of reduction in the chaos in that part of the country to the arrest of Simon Ekpa in Finland. Do you see a correlation? Do you think this would be part of the moves to ending the unrest in the southeast?
I think there is a pure correlation between the arrest of Simon Ekpa and the level at which Southeastern. I can tell you, as at this December, according to people that travel to the east, they said they actually enjoy security. They can travel, they travel freely, and they came back freely. Unlike when the Simon Ekpa is there, you can tell them next 2 weeks is going to be we are going to be sitting at home, and some people will still follow. So I think because he's in the custody, he's been in custody now. I think that has reduced his communication down to Nigeria, and that has also shown a better improvement in security. However, I think they should go beyond actually having him in custody. We need to find a way to actually prosecute him. It may not even come to Nigeria to prosecute him, but make sure you prosecute him and make sure that we bring him in. Because many times Nnamdi Kanu will say, if you really, I'm not part of, I'm not in support of Nnamdi Kanu. They have denied themselves, but we also encourage the federal government to find a political solution to the issue of Nnamdi Kanu as well, so that we can get a better southeast, a robust southeast, a southeast with good business, acumen, seeing them displaying it going forward.
Well, we're hopeful that this would also translate to better peace across Nigeria in terms of the handling of our security architecture. We'll come back to this discussion on the Armed Forces Remembrance Day subsequently on the show today, but let's delve into the financial sector. During the Yuletide, much like we had in the year preceding the general elections, cash crunch again. The central bank issued directives to commercial banks in Nigeria. This morning we hear that 9 of those banks were in default to that directive, and they've been issued fines of 150 million naira, totaling 1.35 billion naira. Let's get your thoughts. Walk us through this. Do you think that these fines would deter banks that are in the habits of not having their ATMs dispense cash to Nigerians?
Well, my first concern is that you recall I always make mention that in this studio that this government appeared to be reactive, not proactive. So when we were suffering the cash crunch as of November, December, where was CBN? Why is it that after we have gone through the suffering, it is now they are now coming up with sanction? That shows that they are reactive, they are not proactive. Because I always argue, even with true save the consumers, that if at all you want to sanction people, you're sanctioning them to collect money from them. How about people that have suffered it? I can tell you, when you say POS, I think the full meaning of POS is point of sales, whereby when you buy something in a supermarket, in a store, you pay through POS. But now POS has becoming money selling point, whereby it's not even calling. The plan originally is not that you go there and collect money, but now we go there to buy money. We buy money because when you go to the normal ATM, you cannot access funds. When you go to the bank, they will tell you they can only give you 20,000. Meanwhile, those people at the POS have more. So for me, the 150 million that was fine, I think it's too small compared to the damage Nigerians have actually suffered. So I think it's too very, very small. And I want to advise the CBN that please be proactive. When you see issues, don't wait until 2 months after before you can now bring up your sanction. I think the case is even dying down now that they are bringing sanctions. So they need to be proactive. But I think fine is in the right direction.
Now, a lot of persons continue to blame the former CBN governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, for the woes of Nigerians when we talk about cash scarcity. But it was more or less communicated to Nigerians under the need for us to transition to a cashless economy. Do you think that as a policy statement, the federal government needs to revisit its transition plan to a cashless economy in line with its bid to also mop up liquidity with the amount of cash in circulation?
Right. I think when you say, people don't get some things right. I can tell you that Nigeria is in cashless economy already. We are doing cashless economy already. If you want to pay school fee, do you pay through cash? If you want to even subscribe to any of the TV stations, will you pay cash? How many cash transactions do you actually do? I think Nigerians have actually comply and meet up to the level of cashless. But no matter what, you still need small cash to do something. Even in America, in London, if you still go there, you still need small cash to go to groceries and do other things. So I think Nigeria has embraced cashless enough, and I can salute Emefiele for bringing that policy, even though when he actually did it, it was a very difficult time for him because it was a combination of a lot of problem, and it was a serious cash crunch. But I think going forward, I can assure you that Nigeria has actually embraced it. If I want to send money to a colleague, if I want to give somebody money, I can tell you I cannot do cash. I'm going to do, a transfer. So for me, cashless is what we have embraced, but CBN should do their own part to make sure that they actually dispense cash as expected on ATM and in the bank.
Now, why I asked the question is owing to data obtainable from CBN statistics that last year in 2024, The total cash in circulation, looking at the currency value of banknotes and coins, was well above 4.14 trillion naira. And at 93% of that amount, there about 3.83 trillion naira was outside the banks. Does it worry you that this data more or less says that Nigerians are losing faith in the banking system despite this transition to a cashless society?
Well, that's another case. Nigeria is good at bringing out the policy, but will not follow the policy. You recall that they said that as an individual, you can only have cash of 500,000. If you have more than 500,000 naira cash, that's an abuse, and you have to face the consequence. And they also say
But doctor,
corporate
we continue to see Nigerians who visit social events spray even beyond 500,000. They now call it bundle for bundle at social gatherings, and yet the FCC picks and chooses who to prosecute.
Exactly, that is just my worries, that we are good at bringing about law, but in terms of implementation is a problem. So I think they are selective in choosing who, because I recall the case of Bobrisky, he was prosecuted, but I recall the case of Chief Cubana Chief Priest. I don't know what come out of it. Maybe it was plea bargain. I don't know what happened. We could see the case of Okoya Thomas, the son. We have not seen, but we could see others that keep embarking on that. So I think the EFCC need to go beyond cherry picking or selecting people to actually arrest. So I think it's a very key. But for corporates, you cannot have more than 5 million, which I think these are the things that we must make sure that our law actually works. So once we have a law and you try to be selective, people who are busy. But if you go have a law and you are all out for the law for implementation, Nigeria will surely comply. It's just a case of using belt. There was a time we are not using belt for FRSC law. But now nobody tell you how to actually use it. Once you enter your car, you try to fasten it because you know if you are caught, you are going to pay a price for it. So, but if you think there is no price for spraying money, you go ahead and embark on it.
Now, another worrying issue, especially with the cash in circulation, Doctor, if you agree with me, is on the modus in determining which of the notes are on feet. We beg your pardon, and I don't know if it will be quite blunt to say that even the newly redesigned Naira notes, if you see a number of them in terms of their face value, a lot of them look defaced and unfit. But we continue to see that money in circulation even more than having mint notes in circulation. Do you think the CBN could do better in this resolve?
Right. I think, CBN, for like I always say that they are always reactive, not proactive. You recall that as of last year, November or so, people are saying that the old currency is going to be out of circulation. And we expect them to come out, with a robust message that it is not true. We did not see that. Now, if you look at our currency, I can tell you most of them have been defaced, seriously defaced, that it's pretty difficult for you to believe that it's a country currency. I think we should find a way that through banks to CBN, they can actually withdraw those poorly handled currency, so that at least we can even increase those things. Those things actually add to value of currency itself.
And you also remember, even with the breakdown of how much it cost to redesign the Naira notes, it was some controversy as to why people were asking how much it cost. Why would that sum be almost even more than the value of the note in itself? And it was all hush-hush till the former CBN governor, Emefiele, left the seat of power. In going forward, I don't know if you have any suggestions to the CBN on how to better this aim of having a better face value for our legal tender.
But I think most reaction of CBN governors are just the body language of the president. You recall that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is not like President Muhammadu Buhari. It appears Bola Ahmed Tinubu is much more in charge. He called you to order when he's supposed to call you. You recall even during the Emefiele period, the Minister of Finance came out and said, "I'm not in support of changing of currency. I think is a ill time. I think is a poorly conceived. It is not the right time." But even with his complaint, nobody cared to actually respond to her. But I think with Bola Ahmed Tinubu, you cannot be doing some things under the leadership of the Wale Edun and the Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So I think President Bola Ahmed Tinubu should look into this case and make sure that they actually do the right thing and make sure that our currency is saved.
Now, before we rest this issue, the last one is on what many people say is a blessing and a curse in disguise: the rise of POS merchants in Nigeria. Whilst the ATM points are relatively more like deserts this day, despite the directive, there's a thriving POS merchant business in Nigeria. Many say it's supposed to be serving the unbanked communities. But even in the nation's capital and other major cities in Nigeria, you find that this is the go-to point for Nigerians who need cash at hand, because over the counter there's a withdrawal limit. In balancing these conversations, would you consider the rise of PS merchants more of a blessing in disguise or a curse?
Right. I think if you ask me, I think it's a blessing because it brings about financial inclusion, whereby people in an unbanked area can easily access funds. It's also a blessing in disguise because it's closer to the people. However, it is eroding the responsibility of ATM machine, and that's the worry. So if you look at the erosion, the eroding of that benefit is the function that CBN have to oversight upon, as in to legislate upon, and to make sure that the CBN is playing its role. Why the because if you can even see these POS guys, they will tell you they're also buying those cash from the from banks, and that's why they're adding their money. So it should have been a positive externalities, but as it is now, the CBN have allowed banks to fall short of their service because of the issue of POS. I can tell you some bankers are actually cashing out through this POS as well.
Well, let's move past this issue and dwell on a major issue with some of the solutions preferred by the Director General of the WTO, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. She was talking about the use of AI and the monies that could be accrued to Nigeria should Nigeria go or throw the part of artificial intelligence. She also called for a decentralization of our electricity supply. I don't know if you've had time to review her speech and you care to make any comments in that regard.
Right. I think being a well-informed person, and she has been at the head of Hems of Affairs. There was a time she was the coordinator of the economy. She was the minister of finance. So she's saying it from point of knowledge. So the issue of centralizing electricity, I think it's with the passage of the bill last year, it's even gone beyond decentralization. That simply means that each state can now go and have their own power generating, power distributing, and power transmission. I think that's where we should go. And like I always said, power sector need investment, and the investment must come from the state government first before they can see others investing in it. So I think is in the right sense for us to make that information about us making sure that we have a robust electricity decentralized. And in terms of AI, we cannot lay back. This is the world of technology. I was watching BYD cars that are being banned in America, where it's driverless, doesn't have anybody driving it. So we must also move beyond this where we are and generate internal AI that will benefit Nigeria economy, Nigeria services, Nigeria social amenities, and whatever. So I think it's not a rocket science. We can as well, if I look at most people that are doing well in terms of technology abroad, they are majorly from Nigeria in particular. So we can tap from that their expertise and make sure that we embark on using technology generally, not even only AI, to develop our economy.
I like this talk about an internally developed AI because I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, sir. Most of the AI deployed, especially in the academia, the chatbots we have, ChatGPT, people talk about the technology developed outside Nigeria and that we claim to have people in tech, but we don't have Nigerian brains behind some of this artificial intelligence. I don't know if this is what you're trying to raise, and how can Nigerians also become active players in coming up with this technology? It almost feels as if we talk about it, but when it comes to the practicality and development, we don't have much of a know-how in this field of subject.
Right. I think all the agencies that has to do with technology, they need to come together and create a robust platform for Nigerians. You know that every technology thrive every technology or every economy thrive on a enabling environment. How enabling environment we are, how well are we finding it easy to even access internet to deploy all these tools. You will now see now that we are about to increase the tariff for data. These are other factors that could happen. I remember, was it during Airify? If you go to an area like Union Park, you access free Wi-Fi. So our government need to prioritize those opportunities for Nigerians. I can tell you we have youth that can actually drive this area, but they actually need enabling environment and appropriate funding.
Now, the other issue, which a lot of Nigerians are very not much satisfied with, is our commitments to increasing power generation in Nigeria. The minister also, talking at the budget defense, talked about the hurdles to achieving and surpassing 6,000 megawatts of power. But even as he mentioned these hurdles, we also told that the like of some major players, the likes of Dangote and others, have withdrawn from the national grid and are now generating their own power. Many ask, if private individuals like this can do it, why can't the whole federal government be able to surpass 4,000 megawatts of electricity?
I think it's a soothing relief when I read that news yesterday that on private sector, Total, Dangote have actually withdrawn from using Nigerian electricity, which is a very good one. Imagine that number, 6,500. Nigeria is struggling to do above 4,000 over time. I think it's because of bureaucratic bottleneck. And that's why I said, beyond what we are saying, like Okonjo-Iweala said, it should be decentralized. Then those states, government need to come in and encourage them to actually start their own. Like Niger Delta can start, like Southwest region can start, Northeast development can start, Middle Belt, North Central development can start. That's where we need to do it, so that if we have each of them bring 6,000, before we know, we have over 40,000 generated. I think that's how we need to go about. So about kudos to Dangote, because I know Dangote facility can even generate more than 6,000 on its own.
Now, in terms of the power outlook for 2025, there have been a few days in which power has been rationed in Nigeria in parts, particularly even the nation's capital. There have been some rumors around the corridor that the national grid might have collapsed again. The minister said even last year that it only collapsed 8 times. Do you think that in 2025, in terms of our power outlooks, Nigerians would be expecting a better performance of our national grid owing to this exit of the major players like you talked?
Right. For me, I think I'll be expecting much more power, because with the coming of a private sector providing 6,500, the power outage, I think in my area now, we are having issue of power outage. It was said that from 6th to 21st, they'll be rationing, they'll be interrupting the power. I think that's what we're experiencing now. But going beyond that, you recall that Enugu is trying to bring something up. I think some states in Southwest are also trying to bring something up. So we're expecting much more increment. So for 2025, I think it's going to be a year that will define our new path to better electricity in Nigeria.
Well, we're hopeful that these projections come to fruition. And lastly, before we wrap up on the issue of power, there talks about a power consumer assistance fund. It's Power Up Nigeria that is suggesting that to help Nigerians, that there needs to be a power consumer assistance fund. How would this funding work? And do you think that it would also mop up for some of these loopholes in our power sector?
I think, we have what we call, is it NBET, Nigeria Bulk Electricity, what have you, that actually is between transmission and distribution, that they actually pay ahead for discos, and maybe they pay back. So I think it's not bad if we also have that, because it will help a small businesses, small household to actually access the power as and when due. Because I can tell you, with this era of Ban A, is pretty difficult for most small companies to actually survive.
Well, I must thank you, Dr. Aliyu Ilias, for lending your thoughts to the issues in the news. We do appreciate you for taking our time to join the conversation this morning, and we wish you the best of the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Well, this is as much as time will permit for us to peruse through headline stories and review them along with Dr. Aliyu Ilias. Be reminded that if you have comments or reactions to any of the issues we've discussed, you can do so across our social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and on X at ADBNTV_NG.